Next, let's take a look at the toolbar mode area, a very exciting function, which gives us very flexible options. If I activate it here, we get the same settings that we already know from the signal section. However, we see that the current bar is always meant in the signal section, and here, the previous bar is always meant. How is this to be understood? Let's take a look at this bearish bar and this bullish bar for comparison, and if this bar closes here, then this is the current bar. In other words, if I move this over here, and we see, for example, only this, i.e., this is the bar that has just closed, then this is the current bar. And this blue one is the previous bar, for which we can also define conditions here in Two Bar mode. The same options that we have in the end signal section are also available here, so we can look at two bars together. If we now want to have a short signal at this position, we could configure it as follows. We start with the current bar, i.e. the red one here. This should be bay and EG, have the POG in its body. We already know that. We say here body. And then perhaps say that the delta should be positive. So this is fulfilled. Now let's take the Two Bar mode. Here we now say that the direction should be bullish here. And I would also like to have my POC, my BIPOC, accordingly as the mode in body. So it should be in the body here. And it should have a negative delta in this case. So why? Once I have configured this, I have a lot more setting options. But for testing purposes, let's apply this once. Click on OK. Briefly exit the strategy. Now let's restart our strategy with the configuration. And we'll see that we get our signal right here, because both conditions are met for both bars. The exciting thing now is that we can also enter relations in this area. So we have all the configurations for the bars themselves, which we can make very comprehensively here. But we also have another area here, where we can set relations between the two bars. For example, we can tell the VPOC here that the VPOC of the current bar should be higher or lower or the same as the previous one. For example, you can display when the volume shifts downwards. This usually indicates a stronger downward trend. So let's say that we should be smaller here. Then this POG must be at a lower price level than the one before it. I can also say that I want to have one bar like POG touch. This means that this bar must touch the POG of the previous one. This is often already the case with the configuration, positive to negative, unless the POG is at the top, in which case it is not. But I can add this as a condition here. I can also determine the delta VPOC by saying that must be above or below. So it always refers from the current bar to the previous bar. I can also define more than one touch here. I can specify that the bar volume must be larger, must be smaller. I can define the bar delta and also the bar value. Again, in more detail, I can say that one bar value of this bar here must be larger than the one before it, and then say which one is meant. For example, the current bar value can be the open, yes, and the open here, for example, should be higher than the yes, the close, of the previous one, which are usually the same. But I can also say that here via the high. I can also say here that the high, this one here, may no longer have broken the previous one. Yes, then I would go to smaller and say here, Heizu high. Then I say that the high here must not be 2001 bigger, so it must be smaller in the case than this one. So it was no longer handled, and then that would be determined. That's what these settings are for. And as you can see, I can configure a lot here alone in this area for this gate mode. Otherwise, I have the checkbox. Use this bar as single position at the very beginning. This means that I normally have my signal here on my current bar. If I tick this here, then everything from this bar is used as the signal position. Let's remember briefly that we have this setting: open, high, low, close, VPOC, and so on in the single position area. And this normally applies to this bar. But it can also refer to this bar. If I activate it here, and so in case of doubt, I can also configure very complex signals, 2001. And if I restart the whole thing here, we have now reconfigured something a little, then we get our signal here, and done. So much for the tuba mode. In the next video, we'll take a closer look at the signal position section.